All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, May 8th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mr. Martin.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Marsh?
Here.
Vice Chair Papsadero?
Here.
Mr. Moog?
Here.
Mr. Italiano?
Here.
Mr. Saunders?
Here.
Chair Schneck?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you.
I'd like to say nice strong voices in the back.
Yeah.
That was a very enthusiastic Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a motion to accept the documents for this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Marsh, seconded by Saunders. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The documents are accepted. Are there any changes or corrections to the April 10th meeting minutes? All right, then we can take a motion to accept those.
So moved.
Motion by Saunders, second by
Martin.
Martin. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
Abstentions.
I abstain as well, since we,
Abstention from Papsadero and Moog. And those minutes are approved. At this time, anyone in the audience who's going to speak on any of the cases on
Do you swear or affirm that any statements you give this evening will be true to the best of your knowledge?
Thank you. And do we have any changes to the agenda?
we don't. We had a change and we're shifting it back. So we're going in order as you have them on your
Okay,
agenda.
sounds good. Then we will move to case 1, PZ-24-91, the Leibrand Brown Campbell property at 3700 and 3720 Lacon Road for the approval of a conditional use. Staff report.
All right, good evening. I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to, if you want to click on it, that's fine. It's probably quicker than me clicking individually. Okay, so a little bit of background on this. This specific plan actually almost identically came through to the commission back in the fall of 2023 as an outdoor storage plan that was eventually passed on to city council and approved. This is essentially the same plan that was approved by council with the exception of one of the conditions. The condition number 3 in the original approval stated that the applicant was to utilize dust-free gravel in the outdoor storage areas. I'm going to show those now. So on your screen here, you can see the red highlighted areas. And essentially, they were supposed to have new gravel laid down in this area. Excuse me. That was never completed within the allotted amount of time, and the conditional use actually expired. They satisfied all other conditions, but that was a rather significant portion that they did not complete. So the applicant had to essentially reapply and obtain a new approval. So that's basically what you're looking at this evening. This was part of a testing plan done by the engineering firm Manick Smith, and to save a little bit of time, it was more or less determined that the asphalt millings that were going to be used would be of decent quality and would be comparable, if not borderline sufficient, to use on the property for grading, drainage, etc. But there were a few things that staff had requested previously to determine if this change was appropriate. And that included an ongoing maintenance plan, and as well as some site preparation and identification of who was actually going to be putting down the asphalt millings and how they were going to be, as I said, maintained over time. With that being said, the maintenance plan was important to us as we have had, we being the city, have had code enforcement issues with this property for several years now. As you can see on your screen, there's a substantial amount of ponded water, and this was back in March. Now, granted, the testing that you all received in your packet essentially said that the asphalt millings had already been placed and active on this property for quite some time, and that they need very little maintenance over time. Our concern was, well, if that's to be the case, then, then ponding like that, especially on your screen, should not really occur. And I'm going to walk through some additional pictures to show some of the other code enforcement issues that are quite current still. And back up just a second, the one of the property owners, who was actually the applicant, we have had him cited into court since last July for some of these outstanding property maintenance and zoning issues. Such as you can see here, some of the pavement on the site is in really poor condition. There are inoperable vehicles on the site. There are vehicles that are leased, so you have leased truck parking on the site, which is a non-conforming use. Part of the plan approval by City Council back in 2023 essentially allowed the applicant to retain existing leased parking tenants on the site, with the understanding that they were never to add additional tenants because it was a non-conforming use. And so basically they were permitted to keep what they had, but they weren't allowed to expand that. We have since found that there have been at least 11 new leased trucks for different various companies that are not approved to be on the site since that approval has happened. You can see there's a substantial amount of rubbish and garbage, and there's some piled up tires, there's some scrap wood laying throughout the site. Now this looks a little bit better than it used to, but this fence has been damaged for quite some time. You can see it leaning, especially on the left side of the screen there. This actually is one of the rear building on the site, so I'm actually going to scoot back here. You can see this over on the east side of the building, or of the property. There's a small building right here. That is operated by Expressway, which is a trucking repair company. They are permitted to be there. However, that truck I just showed in that previous slide is actually being parked on the adjacent property. So this property is essentially using adjacent property to store trucks that are in staging, which is obviously an issue because they're essentially using their neighboring land and causing substantial damage to the fence on the adjacent property. And yeah. So that was just kind of a zoomed in shot showing that it clearly was an Expressway truck parked on that area. So given the code enforcement issues for quite some time, staff is concerned at the ongoing maintenance of asphalt millings, even if they are even a better option than gravel. And I want to highlight specifically one of the conditional use requirements under the additional review criteria in section 1123.04. It states, quote, to meet the purpose of the zoning code, be in compliance with the standards established in the code for the land use or activity under consideration, and be in compliance with the zoning district. We have had a substantial amount of compliance issues with this property, as I've said, for several years now, hence why it is still in court and why that is ongoing. And with that being said, the staff recommendation for this is disapproval based on the following reasons: that the proposed outdoor storage area is excessive, the driving surfaces of the overall site have not been adequately maintained over time, the conditions of the previous conditional use have not been met, significant code enforcement issues have not been addressed, and that the applicant has not provided an installation and ongoing maintenance plan. And that's the end of the presentation for that. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff?
So are we reviewing the 10% number, or are we reviewing how the 10%, the over 10% number is finished?
Yeah, so essentially, you're reviewing outdoor storage over 10% and determining if asphalt millings specifically would be an adequate surface. That's the technical request in this case. But like I said, the disapproval is really because of the ongoing code enforcement issues and staff's belief that they have not adequately maintained the additional conditional use criteria.
So the only thing we're approving is the finish?
Correct.
Not the percentage?
Well, it'd be the percentage. Anything over 10% requires conditional use percentage. The applicant original approval terminated because it expired since they didn't finish out the original gravel. So this is essentially a new application.
So is it staff's recommendation to take the outdoor storage back to the 10% or to not approve the finished material?
Well, yeah, so we're recommending disapproval of the entire application, which would default them back to no more than 10%. That is correct.
Okay.
Can you remind me, because I don't specifically remember the last time we had this case, were they over the 10% at that time, or was the 10% what they currently had at that time?
Yeah, so I'll actually go back. And to be fair, this is the exact same area. So on this, it's actually kind of small. It's hard to see there in parentheses, but it's 37% of the site. And it was the same requested area last time. So they didn't change their requested area.
And I take it that extra land to the, I guess, northeast there?
Yeah.
Is that owned by the railroad?
So to the kind of due east, so this portion right here is railroad property. This tiny strip in between is actually owned by this adjacent property. There's a separate property owner that owns this piece back here. So there is one little thin strip of land between this property and the railroad.
Is there an access agreement? Because obviously you can't get to that land to park on it from the adjacent building.
Yeah, there is an access. There's actually a multi-layered access easement between this property owner and all of these property owners, even the ones on the north side of this access road. It's hard to see in here, but this kind of cuts off. But this whole access road is actually owned by this property. But there is an agreement between all of these property owners that they can access it. And I'm not entirely sure of what the terms of said agreement are, but they are supposed to all share some layer and some level of maintenance too. Like I said, I'm not entirely sure of the terms, but I know that's something in the agreement.
So the 37% is just the orange part?
Yes, of this specific property, yes.
When you were showing the picture of the ponding, you talked about that they said that they put the asphalt millings down already. Is that accurate, that those have been laid and they're causing that ponding issue already, or have they not actually put those down?
So as far as staff's opinion, we're unable to determine if that was accurate. That was actually in their provided report from Manic Smith. They claimed that they had been putting it down as recently within the last few years. But what made us have at least some concern with the accuracy of that statement was that they said that there was very little maintenance needed over time on asphalt millings. And so we're like, well, if it was laid that recently, why is it ponding that substantially? That was kind of our question there.
Okay.
Have there been complaints from adjacent property owners about this land?
So we've had, big picture, yes. I mean, we've had a lot of code enforcement issues from really several properties in that area, and several complaints from various different sources about really the entire industrial complex back there, which includes this property and some of the adjacent ones. To be transparent, it's hard to see in this picture, but this property in the north here is also currently undergoing some legal issues as well. And we've had some code enforcement issues with this one back here. And even the one over here on the northwest. So that entire area has had code enforcement issues. Hopefully that answers your question.
Any other questions for staff? Go ahead.
Just one comment, it just seems difficult to be able to move forward when properties have so many unresolved code issues. It makes you question the degree to which they'll even respond to any additional approvals in the future, given the history on the site.
Any further questions for staff?
Yeah, one more. If we deny this, what do you anticipate happening?
So let me go back to, so what would happen if you disapprove of this application that will result in the outdoor storage allowance on the site being reduced to no more than 10%? And there would be no approval for any leased truck parking on the site. Kelly might have something to add.
Sorry, let me just clarify. It does have to go to city council first. So so yes, you can disapprove, but it's a recommendation to city council. City council can take they could also change it, but your recommendation, that's, if it was disapproved by both bodies, the way it is, planning and zoning and city council, that's what the effect was, is that they'd be limited to the 10% storage and other things that Forrest just mentioned. I just wanted to clarify, this goes to council, whether you recommend approval or disapproval.
So the 37%, I mean, it's just, they wouldn't be able to put anything on anything more than 10% of the land that's in orange.
Correct, yes. So the site is roughly 18 acres. It's just over 18 acres. So they would still have about 1.8 acres and some change to do outdoor storage by right. I guess it depends on what would be considered sufficient by that regard, but it would still be a reasonable amount of land to use for outdoor storage.
But a substantial change from what's there now.
Correct, yeah.
And if that were the case, they're still going against the code because of the gravel or lack thereof.
So we originally recommended, so to clarify, yes, gravel is no longer an approvable surface by engineering records. Technically, asphalt millings are not either. We would want actual, impervious surface and actual pavement if it was a new development. But given that the site was historically gravelled, the idea of the original approval was to allow them to maintain that and, bolster it and keep it the way it was, but make it more dust-free and kind of, maintain it over time. So that was kind of the thought around the original approval.
So there's no stormwater management on this site at all?
Oh, I'm not sure. I know that might be something for the applicant. I know that there are some stormwater facilities. There is a stormwater inlet, but I'm not 100% sure where their stormwater would actually go. And I don't think we have any engineering representation. John, do you have any idea?
I don't know. This was developed so long ago, before the current requirements concerning stormwater.
Obviously.
So I'm not sure what's on there.
Did this go through 2 conditional uses? I see BZA did one from 10 to 35 in 2005. And I see the later stuff about the council. Is that it's in the first paragraph of the background.
There were applications about setbacks of the outdoor storage areas that go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, but now anything.
It says
Anything in
BZA
it-
approved a variance to increase the maximum area for outdoor storage from 10 to 35%.
Right, our code has been changed so that it's a conditional use now
Right.
to be in excess of 10%. It used to require a variance.
Variance, yes. I was just trying to get the stuff because I'm trying to remember, because I don't remember this case at all, but I was actually on the BZA at that time. So. I was prison.
And that was from 2005. And
Yeah, there have been a lot of code changes.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get
yeah, so
how many different variances. I know councils had to do stuff too, so.
Yeah, so historically, anything over the 10%, like John said, would have required a Board of Zoning Appeals approval until the code changed, I believe, in 2014.
Any further questions?
For staff.
All right, before we move on, I'll note that Mr. Marsh abstained from this case. And is the applicant here? Come on up and state your name and address.
Can you turn the microphone on?
Tom Hart, address is 5029 Cemetery Road for the applicant. I think Forrest appropriately went over the situation. the history of this site goes way back. I do think asphalt millings have been there a long time. The grid pattern that's up on the screen right now is helpful in the sense that our engineering firm, what we brought to the table recently is the engineering firm went out and tested wherever you see the red dots, and tested the thickness, compaction, the base, what's underneath the millings, basically how the millings function, on the site in ideal conditions, okay? The issue is there hasn't been maintenance. There hasn't been maintenance that the city expects that is appropriate. So, one of the things I'd like to propose tonight is a maintenance plan, is a specific written maintenance plan that would be part of the conditional use if it was approved. The maintenance plan would allow the city to check, as appropriate to see if the applicant is following the maintenance plan. That has been one of the continuing things the city staff has asked for, is a specific written maintenance plan. Another issue that Forrest covered was, kind of the free-for-all of parking that goes on out there. Another thing I think that would be required, and we have tried to suggest putting in writing for this hearing, is a specific parking plan where specific tenants have, designated areas, and the parking free-for-all stops. In your packets, there is a significant amount of testing data and by Manic Smith that I do believe shows that millings work well. The 4 to 6 inches that's out there on a uniform basis, if they are maintained appropriately and properly over time. So, Mr. Chairman, I did write up both a maintenance protocol that I think could be better and could allow the city to provide better oversight enforcement and hold this site to a better standard. I also have a map that designates specific parking areas I would like to approach and pass that out for you. So just in brief, on the first page, there are 3 bullet points. That's what we would propose to go with a conditional use for consideration as the written maintenance plan. Basically that you got to deal with potholes and splits in the surface and ponding, standing water drainage with additional millings, with equipment that can be rented or the site the applicant has on site. But if that doesn't work, you have to go to an outside contractor. We know of contractors that are reputable, and the city I think has awareness and knowledge of, and we have contractors like that would come on site, use heavier equipment, a dozer and steel drum rollers. And that has to be done annually. There should be an annual check to make sure this site doesn't look like what Forrest just put up on the screen. And so, that's the first written commitment we would propose for the conditional use to continue. The staff did ask about, initial installation. How were these millings put on the site in the first place? That's beyond the history of this current ownership, the current applicant's ownership of the property. But we did go out, in the industry, and there's a letter in the packet from Cornell Robertson, who's now in private practice, was the county engineer, that, goes through and walks through how initial installation of millings, thickness, protocol to put them in should happen. So that information is provided. But like I said, the millings have been out there a long time. we did attach in the packet the report. I think you had that in your packet already, but the detailed engineering findings, the grid of what the grid is on the site. As I said, the second issue, if you look at Exhibit C in my packet, we also think it's important to commit that, you know, the parking free-for-all stop and the tenants that are out there now, including some non-office tenants. The 2023 conditional use approval did allow limited parking of folks who are not office tenants. And, you know, that was approved previously. But I think it's important that if the city's going to approve a conditional use, it should nail down where these different parking areas are and who can park there. We are, as Forrest said, there is an ongoing mayor's court action on many of the code enforcement issues on this site. You know, the Planning Commission can't adjudicate those, but there's been some progress made on those. There needs to be more progress. Those issues need to be resolved in the mayor's court to the city's satisfaction. But that has to be done separately than a conditional use. And so I think, you know, in good faith, I think what we try to do is show what's out there on the site, how it can work as asphalt millings that can work in these situations, but they have to be maintained, and we have to nail down the parking. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my presentation. Happy to address any questions.
Thank you. So I think the obvious question is, why didn't we have the maintenance plan before? Didn't the staff ask for that and we didn't get it? Or what were those conversations like?
I mean, I would say that I think the staff has asked for a maintenance plan, to my knowledge and involvement, in the last couple months. I think we did provide a letter from our outside engineer that gave a level of a maintenance plan, but I think more detail was needed. And that's, by the way, I don't know what staff thinks of the maintenance plan I wrote up and presented tonight, so they'll have to weigh in on that. But what happened before that, you know, what happened before February, I don't know, sir.
Are there other questions from the commission?
I do have some. It looks like, I mean, the areas that are highlighted in orange obviously is not the entire site. Is there concern on the areas that have easements on them that are basically access roads? I mean, I would think those would get a lot more traffic than what is stored upon. I mean, are those crushed down because they're used? Is there concern about that portion of the site, or is it only the portions that are in orange?
I think anything that has millings, and I think some of the drive aisles have millings, has to be maintained in that same protocol, or it's going to break down. Millings will break down the most when trucks are turning. You know, a straight shot on them is not as intense, but they have to be maintained. I think that's one of the reasons to also designate where different users can park, so that they're not everywhere, you know, all the time. But I think the maintenance on the drive areas has to be similar. I think some of those drives are actually asphalt. It's a mix.
So I guess where I'm going is, if whatever we decide, I mean, if there is a maintenance plan, is it only the portions in orange, or is it the entire site?
I can interject just a little bit. So the asphalt millings, the maintenance for that would be exclusively related to just the storage areas, but the entire site would still have to meet property maintenance requirements, and that's kind of what we've been dealing with in Mayor's Court. So like if there were paved areas that, you know, that had some wear and tear from the trucks, and just to clarify, pretty much, I mean, I'd say like 80% of the vehicles on the site are large semi-trucks, with the exception of a little bit of employee parking along the northern portion and down in here. But pretty much everything on the south side of the building and back, and even this portion up here is all exclusively semis. But they would still be required property maintenance, by property maintenance code, to still maintain even things beyond the asphalt millings.
Is the vehicle parking area asphalt, or is it a similar material to what we're talking about tonight?
So it's kind of mixed. The area from here, kind of up into this L shape, kind of where it cuts off right here, this was asphalt. But then that's pretty much the entire area that needs to be maintained, like I said, with the code enforcement area, with the code enforcement issues. Everything back here, really about from this line down and around, is all what would be, the asphalt millings area.
With regard to the stormwater and lack thereof system, is there an advantage to the millings or the gravel over an asphalt surface from a site drainage perspective?
I'm gonna plead the fifth in terms of not being an engineer.
I didn't know.
If I try to answer that, I'm gonna get in trouble. I know this, that millings drain well. I personally have been involved in using millings in my life, which I don't hope to go back to. Millings work well for drainage. They work well, to meet a stormwater plan. Once they harden, they're similar, they operate similar to asphalt, but they can't do that well if they're not maintained. The potholes, things like that. Part of maintaining them would be always having the drainage be positive. So whatever the stormwater plan is, and I don't know what it is, it's not going to work if the millings aren't maintained in a way there's positive drainage. So, it's a general answer.
Well, does staff want to look at this maintenance plan and we table this, or?
I guess my question is, so when we were talking about the changes to the agenda earlier, it seemed like it almost went a different way tonight, and we weren't going to consider this case.
No, there wasn't going to be, no, it was always going to be on the agenda. The applicant wasn't sure because of a previous meeting if he was going to be here for the 7 o'clock start time, and so we were going to move him to the end of the meeting. There was never going to be a not here. It was more of where it was going to be heard on the agenda.
Okay.
Sorry, I was
Oh, it's all good.
Vince's old stomping grounds.
I appreciate that clarity. So when we discussed the gravel earlier, last time we had this, we talked about a dust-free gravel. So that's within the code, correct?
So technically, no. But we were treating it as sort of a legal nonconformance to gravel already being there. So the idea was that they would be able to keep what was there and maintain it and kind of improve that, but still maintain it as a gravel surface instead of requiring them to pave the entire thing.
So it's kind of a similar boat with the asphalt.
Mr. Chairman, the dust-free gravel phrase came from the plans that Bob Tucker, who was the city engineer a long time ago, put on the original, or at least one of the original plans for the site.
Yeah.
It was going to be allowed the gravel. So that note, dust-free gravel, that was on the approved plan. So that's why it persists in some of the discussion.
And there's
No, and I think, the millings could do similar things. We just haven't had experience with that to that extent. It may be fine.
I always thought millings were used as a base for road construction, not actually the parking lot construction, not the actual surface. It's always my understanding.
We did provide, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Papsadero, we did provide some documentation on how ODOT uses them, how the county engineer uses them. They are used a lot. But they need to be maintained.
Sure. I would also wonder with heavy truck traffic if they really can withstand that kind of weight. But, the other kind of related, in my mind, question is how easily would be tonight's new information, at least from our perspective, enforceable without having to go through mayor's court, which ultimately is probably kind of the question about any kind of commitments like these, because mayor's court takes time. If these aren't easily enforceable and the applicant has a history of not complying, then it raises the question that, well, then what's the point of committing to something new if it won't be enforced by the applicant itself, as opposed to having to take legal measures.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
So asphalt's just cost prohibitive, is that the only reason?
Yes. That's the reason. And, I mean, it's a type of business that is challenged. It's a logistics business that is challenged today.
Understood.
What kind of burden does a 10% limitation pose to the applicant?
He won't be able to operate his business with that. He won't have the tenant base. He wouldn't have the tenant base he does with the 37%.
Nothing, well, that's a staff question. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak on this case? Okay, so question for staff that I actually just had in my mind and now it's left me. Would the staff position be that we don't want to look at the maintenance plan because they haven't met the other code requirement issue?
No, I don't think it's, we don't want to look at a maintenance plan, but we want to have a plan that's going to be followed through on. If we knew that the maintenance plan would be sufficient and followed, probably don't have a problem with it. Just like any other site approval, it's predicated upon completing the site improvements. So, I guess that's not our biggest concern.
So would there be any value to having another month to look at the maintenance plan and maybe figure out something going forward? Or is that not really an option because of the mayor's court process?
I agree with Mr. Hart that planning and zoning and mayor's court compliance issues are two separate things. I think I also want to make clear that the conditional use is for increasing the 10% storage, and they're requesting that the condition for allowing the increase in 10% storage, that they're permitted to put asphalt millings on. So I just want to be what you're deciding tonight is whether you are going to, as you did in 2023 and what was approved by council, to allow the increase above 10% with the condition saying, and you are allowed to use asphalt millings for that. So I just wanted to make sure that was very clear, because I know we're focusing on the asphalt millings, but we have to remember the actual request is for the increase above 10% storage.
Gotcha.
And approval of that request by council
Yes.
would legalize an existing condition that is non-conforming. Is that accurate? Given that it already is at the 37%?
The conditional use that was approved, what was recommended for approval by planning and zoning and approved by city council was the 37%. So I wouldn't classify it as a non-conforming use since they never met the requirements in order to have an actual conditional use, because they didn't meet the requirements of the conditional use that was granted to them. They had a year to meet the conditions of the conditional use. They didn't.
They did not.
So they did not.
And to clarify further, the nonconformance portion comes in when you're weighing dust-free gravel against asphalt millings. So both of those are technically considered nonconforming surfaces to drive on.
Yeah, I think the thing that's in my mind is that I already voted on this, and it's like I want consistency, but it's also like they haven't met what we gave them the last time, which bothers me. So, any other thoughts from commission members?
Well, John, did you answer the question whether you want another month to look at this, or do you not?
I'm sorry if you don't mind me interjecting. As with any case, the applicant would have to request the postponement.
Yes.
I know me personally, I just received the maintenance plan tonight. I don't know if it was
Yes. I mean, I definitely would not want to go forward without the staff having a look at the maintenance plan. I just want to make sure there's value in that before, I guess, we'd ask the applicant if he wants to postpone.
Bingo.
I'll just say, Mr. Chairman, that if staff thinks it's worth that, if staff wants to look at the detail and you know, give code enforcement something, you know, better to work with, we would do that. We would want that opportunity and postpone, but I think staff has to want to do that.
I have to, so this is where, because the request is for the increase in storage from 10%, and that to be asphalt millings. I think the actual question is whether staff is willing to reconsider its recommendation of disapproval on increasing the storage percentage on this site. And whether, by us looking at this maintenance plan, whether we think that will, you know, will it benefit staff looking at this maintenance plan to change our mind on that? I want to be, again, I think I'm trying to be very clear. The request is for the increase in storage.
Yes.
And a certain, gravel or asphalt millings is the request for that storage. So I can't answer that because it's community development staff that considers that. So I just want to make that very clear to John. The actual question is, do you think by reviewing the maintenance plan for the asphalt millings may change, or, you know, would it provide us more information regarding the actual request for an increase in storage?
Would it impact, basically, would it impact whether it's reasonable or not to increase the storage amount? That's what it comes down to. It's a condition related to that, so it's not, we're not deciding on that, but would this impact it? That's what it comes down to.
I don't know that
Possibly.
the maintenance plan makes a difference. I think having a maintenance plan is a great idea and we should have one. But is that, whether it's 10% or whether it's
Right.
11% or whether it's 9%?
That doesn't really impact whether it makes sense to
bigger
go from
question
10 to
is-
37 or 10 to 50, yeah.
The bigger question is the 37%.
Well, do you want time to look at this as to whether it works for the 10 or the 37?
I read it. And I think the elements that are in it are things that we should have in a maintenance plan. It talks about what you have to do and how often, and and that kind of stuff. And if there are issues, then you take care of them. It's better than not having anything. So because I think it's clear on what those things should be. I think there would have to be at the ultimate approval. So if this is at city council, there could be specifications on this. Either, yep, that's that maintenance plan as it is, or if the commission decides the maintenance plan should be approved with conditions or changed in some way, that's different too. But I just think whatever happens out there, you have to have, it has to meet the codes for whatever their approval was, property maintenance and so forth. So
It's a bit of a red herring, quite frankly. It's about the storage space. And like with many applications with this, in other words, it's, we'll grant this, but we want these conditions on it. But that's not about, but the first and the primary question is, does it make sense to allow more than 10%?
Yes, which I've voted in favor of before. So I guess the question in my mind is, as a commission member, am I allowed to take into consideration the non-compliance aspects of the former conditional use? Or am I just considering this as if it's a new case?
So this is a new application. The conditional use that you were previously heard was never, I don't know if it was never finalized because the conditions for that conditional use were never met. So this is a completely new application. It has the history. I'm not trying to discount the history of it, but this is a new application.
Yeah, and the other thing there is, I don't remember how many conditions we have when we did that approval. I don't have those in front of me tonight, so I wouldn't want to make a motion without looking at the other conditions as well, because we've only really talked about the asphalt millings aspect.
Mr. Chairman, if I may interject, I believe it was 5 conditions, and they completed 3 of the 5. They technically did all that they could for 4 of the 5. The 4th condition was that they were to obtain a zoning certificate for the outdoor storage area. They did apply for it, but it never was able to be approved because they never completed the gravel. So they would have had to have completed the dust-free gravel to obtain the zoning certificate. So essentially, they did everything that they could do with the exception of the dust-free gravel. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, so we'd only be concerned about the zoning certificate and the gravel/millings.
I do think it's worth considering the leased truck parking as well. I think that's also worth considering, if that's still appropriate, since they,
Oh, yeah.
they were permitted by council to have a limited number of leased trucking spaces with the existing tenants only, but they had expanded that during that time. So I do think that that should be delineated too.
Yeah, we need to have any kind of restrictions we think are appropriate if we're going to allow the thing. And then after that, it's on the city to, and of course, the applicant to first comply, but if they're not, for the city to say, you know, you're bad and we're going to come after you.
Any other thoughts?
My concern is the lack of them, I guess, fulfilling what they were supposed to do and the maintenance of it. That, I mean, it looks horrible if you look at those pictures. I don't know what the rest of it looks like. So I would lean towards voting no until they can prove that they are able to maintain that property in a way that will be acceptable by the city before we approve a maintenance plan that they may or may not abide by in the future. That's kind of my thoughts right off the top.
Is that line of thinking like allowable from a planning and zoning commission member perspective?
Well, in the meantime, can I
It's
ask?
a tricky case, and that's like the whole thing makes me like hesitant
It
to move
is.
forward.
I think staff is trying to be very transparent as to the, what is happening with this property. And it would have been wrong if we didn't bring up that there are property maintenance compliance issues in addition to them not following through on a previous conditional use. I believe that using what may be happening with their property maintenance is not necessarily tied to this application. And you need to review this application on the basis of what the applicant has requested, which is an increase of 10% storage to 37% and the use of asphalt millings on that area.
Right. And it may weigh into the decision in terms of making sure you put all the conditions you want to put on it because,
Yeah, that's my
because of how they are. But whether or not you approve it is a separate issue. It's they want more than 10%. The code says 10%. Is it reasonable for this particular property, no matter who it is, to have that? And then if that's the case, then fact may make you feel different. This is a new application, actually, and so you're not wed by what you voted before.
That is true.
But and correct me if I'm wrong. I speak as a lawyer, but I'm not the lawyer for the city. We could, if they are concerned about whether the applicant is going to have a well-kept property and do the thing we can do, that's what conditions kind of come into place and that we could put in place.
Yeah, and I would like to have those conditions all written out ahead of the meeting.
Yeah.
Ideally. So I guess my ideal situation is the case gets postponed and maybe we see the different options in the packet next time we consider it.
Could I ask a question of the applicant?
Sure. And you'll have to come up to the mic.
Within this plan that you've presented, is there a starting point when this maintenance is going to occur?
I mean, I think the maintenance needs out there are now. Some of that is being adjudicated through the mayor's court, but I think that would be part of the discussion with the city, if they want to see a different time frame, when they want to see different things, different actions taken, that's the kind of dialogue that would be helpful. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be, what is the city, really, the way to think about this is, let's say there's a different owner trying to operate a logistics business, what's the baseline maintenance that should be applied to this site?
Right.
If to asphalt the whole site, it's not going to be economic for a lot of different businesses. But if some other user was there and they're trying to operate something similar, what would be the right maintenance plan? That is findable and writable, and part of that would be the timing, of when things have to happen. There's going to be always a big need on a site like this after the freeze-thaw cycle every year to look at the site and figure out what has to be fixed, because by the nature of our weather and that type of material. So that's a starting point, but you're right, the staff may want more.
Wait, is there a sequence of when this maintenance happens? Is it once in the spring, once in the fall? I mean, is that clearly outlined in here?
Historically, it's been haphazard as can be. It's been when the owner saw something that he thought should be fixed. I think coming up with a schedule that the city feels is appropriate would be appropriate in this situation.
That's my question, is
Yeah.
the schedule in this document?
There's one date in this document of May 1st to evaluate whether off-site contractors should be used. But there's not more than one, there's not more than one date. There's not, biannual maintenance.
And if
There's spot maintenance with the judgment call of whether an outside contractor should come in.
Would the applicant be, or the tenant be, the owner of the property be willing to agree to a schedule of?
Yeah, I think so. I think he has to keep operating.
And those details could also be worked out if this case were postponed and they had a month to figure it out. So I think at this point, we'd like more detail. We'd like written recommendations if this were to pass from staff. So the question is, are you willing to postpone to
Yes.
next month?
Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, I will move to postpone case PZ-24-91, the Leibrand Brown Campbell property, to the June 12th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Second.
Second by Saunders. Let's do a roll call vote.
Chair Schneck,
Yes.
Mr. Saunders,
Yes.
Vice Chair Papsadero,
Yes.
Mr. Moog,
Yes?
Mr. Taliano,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Motion carries 601.
All right. So yes, I was like, what's the one? But I get it now.
Feet out there.
All right. So that case is postponed to next month, and we will revisit it then. All right, on to case number 2, PZ-25-12, ARTIC Express at 4277 Lyman Drive for the approval of a sign variance. Staff report.
Thank you.
For our cold cases?
Yes.
But they didn't get ARTIC Express.
You did
so-
make it through the first case without one, so I do want to commend you for that.
Yeah, that one was brutal.
Thank you. So this is the site located at 4277 Lyman Drive. The applicant is requesting a variance for a sign setback on this location to 15 feet from the curb, which is a half a foot from right-of-way. There was an existing sign at that location, which was hit by a car and damaged. So this is the new sign that they are proposing at that location. The illumination is 1/4-inch push-through, which does meet code requirements. So everything on it meets code requirements with the exception of the location. So with that, staff is recommending approval. The proposed sign is generally consistent with the spirit and intent of the sign code, and the proposed variance is not substantial and will not be detrimental to the surrounding property owners. So we're recommending approval with the following 2 conditions, and I'll answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Do they use millings on the property?
That's a question for the applicant.
Is this an existing sign?
So there was an existing sign there that was damaged by a vehicle. Yes, so this is a brand-new sign that they will be installing. And they do have electric currently at that location from the previous sign, so they're wanting to utilize that same location to utilize that electric that's there.
So typically, it would not be allowed in this location, and we're approving the difference.
They're recommending or they're requesting a variance for the setback, correct?
Any other questions for staff? All right, is the applicant here? So, state your name and address.
Colin Brinkman, DaNite sign, 1640 Harmon Avenue, Columbus, Ohio.
Anything you'd like to add to what staff said?
No, they kind of explained it. I did bring a photo of the sign when it was hit by a car. But yeah, basically, Christy gave us a pretty good outline of it. There was an existing sign there, externally illuminated. Unfortunately, got hit by a car. And basically, because they have existing electric out at the site and pretty good visibility from that area, yeah, the hardship would be, they do, want another illuminated sign in a different area. They're going to have to trench electric to the new sign location with poor visibility because there are some trees in the area that would hinder the visibility of the new sign. So, yeah, that's about it.
All righty. Any questions for the applicant?
I have one. If we're putting a sign back in the same spot where it got hit by a car,
Maybe not the same spot, but very, very close to it where we can tie into the existing power. Because they had 2 spotlights on each side of the sign. Okay. So we're going to position it as close as we can to where the existing sign is.
is there any provision to be made to try and prevent a car from hitting it again?
Traffic laws.
We do have curbs in the area.
Yeah, maybe some speed bumps down there. I don't know, but yeah, yeah, maybe that.
I mean, I'm familiar with people building in flood zones, and I just.
But yeah, no ballards or anything like that around the sign.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this case? All right, I think we can take a motion.
I'll move that we approve case 2 PZ 25-12 for Arctic Express for sign variance with the 2 conditions as provided by staff.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by
Vince.
Italiano. Please call the roll.
Mr. Moog?
Yes.
Mr. Italiano?
Yes.
Chair Schneck?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Vice Chair Papsadero?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, that case is approved. Thank you. And we are on to case 3, PZ-25-13, GUTRIDGE at 3637 Lacon Road for the approval of a sign variance. Staff report.
All right, so this is actually somewhat of a similar case, except this one did not get hit by a car. But this is for an existing sign. It's actually highlighted on your screen there. Historically, the Graphics Commission actually approved an additional sign on this property. And so the actual sign has been approved. However, there was never an actual setback variance approved for it, and it was installed a couple feet too close to the right-of-way. So this is the actual sign. It's really just, so basically this entire site is operated by GUTRIDGE. The southern building is actually just going to be their human resources portion. It's a relatively small sign. It's only 13 square feet. And so you're basically approving the setback variance for the sign to remain in its existing place. So there's the black line on the right side of the screen there is the actual public right-of-way. And then the distance shown is about 12.5 feet. So it's 12.5 feet from the right-of-way, which would be a 2.5 foot setback variance.
All right. Is that,
So staff recommends approval with the conditions as shown. Be happy to answer any questions.
do we have any questions?
So we're not approving the sign itself, just the location.
Yeah, the sign outside of that meets the original graphics variance approval and the other code requirements. You're basically just approving the setback.
Okay, is the applicant here? Come on up. State your name and address, and then anything you'd like to add.
Keith Arndt, I'm employee at GUTRIDGE, 3637 Lacon. We're new to the neighborhood, so nothing to add. Existing sign prior to us. We're just getting everything moving in and getting the sign up.
Sounds good. Do we have any questions? All right, thank you. And is there anyone in the audience who wants to comment on this case? All right, we can take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that for case 3, and I'll just point out, like on the agenda, it says case 2 for the packet.
Yeah.
We miss Carson.
Just clear, just for the record, but case 3, PZ-25-13, that we approve graphics variance to reduce the required right-of-way setback 15 feet to 12.5 feet with the 2 conditions listed in the staff report.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Martin. Please call the roll.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Taliano?
Yes.
Mr. Moog?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Chair Schneck?
Yes.
Vice Chair Papsadero?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, that case is approved.
We didn't want to have them do a plan.
I don't get that one.
The first case,
okay,
come on.
I got you.
I know, that wore me out too.
Too soon. Are we moving on to the urban mineral or the Gibson dental?
Oh, yeah, there are 2 5s
Oh,
in the
I
packet.
skipped a page. Gotcha. Okay, so we're on to case number 4. PZ-25-14, Gibson Dental at 4444 Davidson Road for the approval of a sign variance. Staff.
Thank you. So this is a request for a sign variance, 32 square foot sign here located as the red area located on your screen. So the existing sign is a 2-panel sign for Davidson Road Primary Care and Britain Norwich Learning Campus. Davidson Road Primary Care is no longer there. Gibson Dental has purchased the building. So they were looking to replace the sign, but the sign was damaged. So they couldn't just replace what was existing. So they are proposing the sign here on the right of the screen, 32 square feet. This is an up-close version of the sign. And the variance is for the sign design. So code requires monument base, concrete stone or brick. And what they're requesting is a 2-post sign with an aluminum skirt. So with that, the proposed sign is generally consistent with the spirit and intent of the sign code, and the proposed variance is not substantial and will not be detrimental to the surrounding property owners. Staff recommends approval with the following 1 condition. Any questions?
I have a question. Are there other examples of the aluminum skirt in Hilliard?
There's the Verizon site has a ground sign that instead of having a masonry base, they have a metal base. It's like a brushed aluminum. It's pretty shiny. Yeah, it's nice.
There's no concerns with maintenance on that, on this skirting?
No more than normal. They don't have to maintain it, but it makes for an easier transition when you change the sign. When you put those masonry bases in, you're pretty locked in there, but this gives them more flexibility.
Was the masonry base damaged?
Yes, and the applicant can probably speak better to that, but it's hard to tell in this photo, but if you get close to the sign, it is leaning because they believe the posts inside were bent, yes.
Okay. So from a staff perspective, I mean, we're kind of going against our own code here. And it requires a masonry base, and we're approving one without a masonry base, and we're saying that's cool. So I'm curious why.
Correct. They're requesting a variance. I know we've approved, the commission's approved two-post signs. So this is a two-post sign. It just has a skirting wrapped around the posts.
So we're not requiring a masonry base because the applicant is not is not willing to put one in, or?
They're requesting a variance for it, correct?
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
This may be the applicant, but I'm assuming since the school district has a sign there that they've been consulted with that they're in agreement with the design of that as well?
The owner of Gibson Dental has consulted with the school district, yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Is the applicant here? Hello, please state your name and address.
Hello, I'm Kathy Demidovich, and I'm with American Sign Studio. Do you want my home address or the business?
I don't know. What do we want, staff?
Business address, thank you, is, we just moved 6155 Huntley Road, Worthington, Ohio.
Anything you'd like to add to what's been said so far?
Yes, I would. I appreciate the questions. Yes, it's a masonry base, and we're asking to not use that again. We tried to replace the masonry base. The sign company got at least three separate quotes on the masonry, and it was extremely expensive to replace the masonry as well. The sign itself exists all on Dr. Gibson's property, and so the Britain Norwich Learning Campus is not obligated at all to pitch in or help with the cost. He's reached out to them, but I'm not, he's the one who's obligated to replace the sign. So with the expense of the masonry work, we were able to give him a quote with this skirt that was much more reasonable. And with him being fully responsible for the financial cost of the sign, that's a reason why we went away from the masonry, which is leaning right now and damaged.
I was going to make a comment that I think the applicant's cost to replace the sign should not be a factor in our decision in approving the variance. It's purely on aesthetic grounds or other related grounds per code, not an economic consideration on their part.
Right. And I would agree. It just, the look of the sign, I know he liked the design, and it fits with the rest of his design in the building, and I'll just stop there. I appreciate your comments. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, when we were discussing sign code changes, over the last couple of years, we specifically talked about this very thing, and the idea of changing the code to specify something like this that would be allowed, we thought was more difficult, that if somebody wanted to apply for it, if they could demonstrate a quality look for something that wasn't a masonry base, would come through this body, we were more comfortable with that because we think it's a good provision to have in the code to allow something like this. We didn't want to just make it outright permitted so that we didn't have to approve something that didn't look to be a quality item. We think this will be a quality look.
So it's a conditional sign use in essence. Said so it's a conditional sign use in essence.
Well, and I think in the right place, in the right design, it's appropriate. I think if somebody did not want to do that, then there's that masonry base requirement. This gives some leverage for a different opportunity that still looks good.
I do like the skirting better than a two-post sign, personally. I'll just throw that out there. Any other questions for the applicant?
Is there landscaping around the sign, or, I mean, is it?
Yes, there is. In the document, we're going to use the existing evergreen shrubs that are there now. I think it's page 9 of our document.
Is there illumination?
No.
So the general location of the sign is consistent with what's there now?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Does the address have to be on it?
So, sorry.
Is that a
Oh,
fire
there it
code
is.
thing?
All right.
Oh, okay, I get what you were asking. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this case? All right. Any conversation amongst the commission members? Okay, and we can take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we approve case 4, PZ-25-14, Gibson Dental, with the one condition listed in the staff report.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Moog. Please call the roll.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Italiano?
Yes.
Mr. Papsadero?
Yes.
Chair Schneck?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Moog?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, that case is approved.
Like pulling teeth to get through that one.
On to case number 5, PZ-25-15, Urban Mineral Magic at 4323 Cosgray Road for the approval of a modification of the Hoffman Farms PUD concept plan and development text. Staff report.
Thank you. So the site is a tenant space in that commercial center on Cosgray Road. There's the floor plan. So because of a strange occurrence in our code revisions over the last few years, grocery stores, which used to be allowed in the B2 zoning district, are not now, and that's going to be adjusted. So the applicant chose to file this as opposed to waiting for us to change that typo. It was basically a typo when the code got changed in 2014. So this would have just add that line item, grocery store, to the zoning text, and it's consistent with the original approval that allowed grocery stores in the B2 district. So this would basically be their quickest remedy. Staff finds that the proposed PUD text modification is consistent with the intent of the original Hoffman Farms PUD. Based on that finding, recommending approval with this proposal as proposed. Did you have questions about that?
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I've got a question about the solar panel layout. I mean, what are we approving from a solar panel submission? I mean, anything?
Different case.
That's,
Yeah, this is,
Oh, it's the next one? My apologies.
I thought I completely missed it.
My apologies.
Okay. Other questions? No other questions?
Does this applicant want to add a solar panel?
We'll bring the applicant up right now. Is that you guys? Come on up
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
and state your name and address.
Good afternoon, Khadija Hamati, 4323 Cosgray Road, Urban Mineral Magic.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add to what's been said so far?
We just want to add a grocery store to Hoffman
Okay.
Farm and improve the area.
No solar panels?
Neighborhood requested.
No solar panels, at least as of
No
now,
solar
right?
panels. No.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to comment on this case? Come on up and state your name and address as well.
I'm Dimitri Sagoradis. I reside at 5974 Wilshire Drive. I frankly have no objection with this wonderful store and the fact that they want to sell other products that are considered grocery products. The reason I came here tonight is because when I read the announcement, it says we're actually changing the zoning, according to this, to allow groceries in Hoffman Farms. My biggest concern is I reside, my community is a condominium community right across from this location on Cosgray. And as you're aware, south of this location on Cosgray, there's a big plot for sale. And so my concern now is this an exception? Just like we're doing with the signs, there is a code and we're doing an exception in allowing this business, which is a small family business in an existing facility, to open a grocery and expand their business to be a grocery? Or are we now opening that huge plot of land that is for sale, both to the south of this location and to the north, to one day become a big grocery store? Now, obviously, like you said, maybe grocery stores would be approved at some point in time. But I can tell you, since the well is being built, and since we put that roundabout around with these big bumps that causes every single person, I don't know if you've driven through there, to actually stop, press the brakes in every intersection with a crosswalk. Every day between 4 and 5 o'clock, the traffic on Cosgrave goes all the way to the new other roundabout because people don't have a lot of access. So my concern, what I want you to, the point that I want to make is, are you approving, or is the proposal that we approving this one store becoming a grocery store at that scale of a facility, or are we saying that tomorrow a Kroger's can come over there and build a Kroger's?
This is only for this site. The large property to the north of this is in a different zoning classification. This only changes the permitted uses for this site that this business is on.
Okay, but that is not what this says. This says we're changing the code that exists for Hoffman Farms to allow for groceries. We're not saying we're maintaining the existing code, and we're providing an exception, just like we're doing with the sign.
It's not an exception. It's changing the language in the text to match what it had in the original proposal. It changed when the zoning code changed. It changed this accidentally, without intention. This is putting it back to the original approval.
So if I may, if I purchase the land north of CVS and I apply to the city of Hilliard after this decision that I am going to build a huge
This decision has nothing to do with the property to the north of it. It's a different zoning classification.
That's a different,
It's not Hoffman Farms.
not part of Hoffman Farms.
Okay, so it's a different,
Yep.
Yes.
If you looked at a map, they'd be different colors.
okay, including the one to the north?
Yes.
Okay.
The one to the north is different. It's not, this only applies to the one property that has the strip center on it.
No, I know exactly the property. The question I'm asking is, are the two other properties that are large, empty, green properties to the west of Cosgrave considered part of the Hoffman Farm?
No.
They're not?
No.
So what are they? Industrial land, commercial land? What are
No,
they?
it's a PUD. It's called the Patch Property PUD, the one to the north. I'm not sure which other piece you're talking about.
That can be followed up on later, though.
South of Park Meadow.
That's zoned
All right,
rural
There's
residential.
a lot of talking going on. Let's not do that for the sake of our online viewership.
The property, the undeveloped property south of this site, south of Park Meadow Lane, which is also north of the CVS and north of the Clovergrove Stream, there's a 5-acre undeveloped piece. It's currently zoned rural residential. You could put a couple of houses on it at this point. It's not in Hoffman Farms. It's not in the Patch property. It's not in the PUD. Has nothing to do with what's proposed here.
And the city has a map online you can look at and see the division in the land as well. So,
Okay,
all right.
that's the concern. Thank you.
No problem. Any other discussion on this case? All right, then we can take a motion.
A motion that we approve Case 5 PZ 25-15 Urban Mineral Magic at 4323 Cosgrave Road with the one condition?
I don't see a condition.
Conditions? With no conditions.
Motion, so it's up to
As
you.
as made, so no, I don't want to add
No
any
condition,
conditions.
all right. So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Papsadero. Please call the roll.
Mr. Italiano?
Yes.
Chair Schneck?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders? Yes. Vice Chair Papsadero?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Moog?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, so that will be a positive recommendation to City Council. And we will all move on to case number 6, PZ-25-16, the junction by Westwood at 5460 Franklin Street for the approval of an old Hilliard district plan. Staff report.
Thank you. So this proposal is for solar panels and for an awning that was installed. This, you can see the solar panels. This is on the north side of the building, and there's, I guess, northeast side of the building, and the southwest side has panels similar to that. They're parallel to the roof, just like shown there. And you can see this is the awning. It has some of the enclosure around it for the cold weather, but it's really designed to be outdoor seating, and those panels can be raised up so it'll be open air. And then there's an entry vestibule just immediately to the right of that. So between the Sexton's Pizza sign and the awning, you can see it here. So you can see there the striping in the parking lot. That awning and enclosure covers a portion of the handicap accessible parking space. So those will be relocated slightly to the left as you're looking at that picture, so they can accommodate both. There's plenty of room there to do that. This site plan shows that space number 20 and 21 are shifted slightly to the left there from where the awning is, and then there's additional room for that space 19. What we're recommending, you can see on there, it says bollards and planters. The original proposal was to use some of those large planters. If you've ever down on the Thursday night concert series, they used to block off Center Street with the idea was to put something like that there. Those may not be available, so our suggestion was to be some combination of bollards or planters or one or the other to put there. You can still leave room for handicap accessible walking over to the entry, but we can work something out with them. But they're going to have a vested interest in doing that. There's room to put some things up, whether it's bollards or something else that's going to make a good demarcation from the parking area to the outdoor seating area. If the commission would rather we bring something back to you, we can do that. Or if you would like us to work out something with them, we can do that as well. The solar panels were put up already. There was some confusion in our online system. I think we've corrected that, where there's a piece that says you have to do. When we had paper copies, it was easy to put all the papers together. Here's the forms you need. And the online system, the electric permit was applied for. The other two were not, and it went ahead. They thought they had the approvals. We did approve the electric permit, and so there was nothing changed. But because it's in Old Hilliard, it's supposed to come to this body. So as soon as it got in, they applied, and here we are. This is the dimensions on the awning. We just want to make sure that whatever the permits that are needed get applied, so they have a record of that for whatever they do there. So two motions. One is for the solar panels. Staff finds that they are consistent with the spirit and intent of the applicable zoning requirements and are harmonious with the building architecture. Based on that finding, we're recommending approval with the one condition there. And as far as the awning and entry vestibule, we find that they're harmonious with the building architecture. And as amended in the conditions in the staff report, they will provide a safe outdoor seating area. Based on these findings, we're recommending approval with, it says two, but it's three conditions there. Do you have questions about those?
Do we have any questions about the case?
So everything that we're approving is already in place?
The awning is in place and the solar panel is in place. The the bollard or planter things are not in place. But yes, the awning is in place and the panels are in place.
So we're going to manipulate the parking a little bit and throw the bollards in?
Yes.
Are we eliminating any parking spots, or are they just?
No. There was a reduction in. Let me go back to that. There was some spaces lost when you look at the enclosure here, but there was some additional parking here, and then this property also includes the property where the winery is, and so there's significant parking. But we want to show, at least on this site, there's the 21 spaces, and so they'd meet the requirements.
Any other questions? All right. Does the applicant want to come up? Is that you guys? Okay, come on up. State your name and address, and then anything you'd like to add.
Joey Sexton, 5460 Franklin Street. I think he said it all.
All right.
Yes, Jake Tribbiano, 95 Longview Drive. I believe you also said it all as well. So, don't have
All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Just want to thank you for your patience, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you. There's no one in the audience, so we'll skip that part, and we can take two motions from someone.
I'll go again. That's
ahead.
fine. I will make a motion that we approve PZ 25-16, the junction at Westwood. The first motion to approve the solar panels with the one condition listed.
Is there a second to the motion? Second by Marsh. Please call the roll.
Mr. Moog?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Chair Schneck?
Yes.
Vice Chair Papsadero?
Yes.
Mr. Italiano?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. And the second motion.
I'll make a second motion on the same case to approve the proposed awning and entry with the three conditions listed.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Italiano. Please call the roll.
Mr. Italiano?
Yes.
Mr. Moog?
Yes.
Chair Schneck?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Vice Chair Papsadero?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, that case is approved on all fronts. And we can all move on to case number 7, PZ-25-18, a zoning code amendment. Staff.
You've seen a number of food trucks in the past, and some of the conditions of approval that we've put on, we're trying to just codify some of that, just to make it easier. Some of them relate to the generator, some to outdoor speakers, and then hours of operation. So what this does is it adds a definition of quiet generator and requires a quiet generator, so you can see what the requirements are there for the noise level. And then these other three, one, it shows where the quiet generator must be placed, on the away side from any adjacent businesses or public spaces. Prohibits the external speakers or music or any amplified sound, and then it also specifies hours of operation, especially when you're within a certain distance of residential property. We think that these will make it easier for us to deal with the food trucks generally, and staff finds that the proposal is consistent with the purpose of the zoning code to promote public health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare. And based on this finding, recommending approval for the commission to forward a positive recommendation to City Council. Do you have questions about any of those items?
So are we just, go ahead.
Sorry, can I say, just to clarify, so the version of the amendments in code that were in the packet have been slightly changed just to capture that this is more than just food trucks. We define these types of vehicles as mobile food vehicles. And so the version that's on that we're including in your packet is actually the one that you're approving tonight.
So we've got the generators and such, but I know we've had the cases to approve the food vehicles themselves in the past. Would we still get those, or does that depend on the location?
You're still going to get these, but this will just make it a codified. When people are applying, they'll know that they need to
make the
do this.
conditions
Yeah.
and so forth. Okay. Any other questions for staff?
A question about the generator location. So there's that one that said Advanced Auto Parts. How do we decide which side of that is not public facing?
Put it away from the houses.
Okay.
Is what we're going to tell them.
All right.
I think that was part of it had to be screened.
It had to be screened.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I know that's what we did on that one.
those would, I think the overriding thing is 200 feet from a residential property. That's, I think, the closer thing there. So that will govern.
Well, the ones we've approved in the past, I don't know, do they have quiet generators? Is this like they get grandfathered in if they have a non-quiet generator? I don't know how that works. So going forward, it would, okay, gotcha. Any other questions for staff?
One more. Does this apply just to the ones that are kind of like permanently fixed, or is this like, I know like our neighborhood and other neighborhoods have a truck come in once a week. Are they also obligated to?
It would not be those. This is when you have a a fixed site, yeah. Or if you're going to be, for example, if somebody was going to come through and get approved for, hey, I want to be out in front of Kroger every lunch time from 11 to 3 every day, then we would make them come through here as it's more of a fixture, right? So they might go somewhere else, but they want to be there all the time, and then we would have to deal with this issue. If it's like the ice cream man coming through the neighborhood, or if somebody's got a party and it pulls up into their driveway, this would not apply to that.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, no one is in the audience, so we'll assume there's no public comments, and we can take a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'd like to motion to approve PZ-25-18, the approval of an amendment to the Hilliard Code, Chapter 753, concerning mobile food vending operations, including generators and outdoor speakers.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Papsadero. Please call the roll.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Papsadero?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Chair Schneck?
Yes.
Mr. Italiano?
Yes.
Mr. Moog?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, so that will be a positive recommendation to City Council. On to discussion items and communications. I'll make the intern introduce himself. Go ahead with your microphone on, please.
Hello, my name is Andrew Stoltz. I am the planning intern for this summer. I am very glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I take tips. Yeah, I'm currently a second-year master's student at Ohio State University, studying city and regional planning. Thank you.
All right, we'll look forward to you presenting a case in the future. Maybe the Leibrand Brown one that we just postponed.
This is his 4th day. We'll see how he is next week.
Okay. Sounds good. With that being said, we're still having our special meeting May 22nd. All right, that'll be at 7 o'clock. And is there anything else? All right, we can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Marsh, seconded by Moog. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.